Hey all, Tom Ray here from Tom's Big Spiders. So obviously, if you've seen the title of this video, we're taking a break from spiders or arachnids today, and we're going to be taking a look at roaches. And I know this is odd, but I've had a lot of folks asking me to do a video on the the Magnificent Emerald Roaches, and they earned that name because they are absolutely stunning. But I have to be completely honest. I saw these guys pop up a couple of years ago on Instagram and Facebook, and I saw the picture and went, wow, those are pretty, and just kind of moved on. I didn't really have much of an interest in them. It was actually Billy who about a year and a half ago or so saw them up at Fear Not Tarantulas, and Billy is the one that actually takes care of our feeder roach colonies here that we feed off to our spiders. And I'm thinking, and I didn't ask her, but I'm guessing there was probably a point where she's like, all right, I'm raising these ones to feed off. It would be really nice to raise something that wasn't going to get devoured by spiders. Because to be completely honest, we get no joy out of feeding out any of these roaches. I have a B. dubia and a B. lateralis colony. I also keep hissers. The hissers we do not feed out anymore. They become pets, but the other ones we do feed out. But I feel bad because we raise them for little babies and then they kind of go off to slaughter. However, in this case, this would be an ornamental roach, so we would obviously not be feeding these off. So we ended up picking up a bunch of them from Fear Not about a year and a half ago. I did a bunch of research, and while doing the research, I realized two things. One, there was a lot of different conflicting information out there on how to keep them. And two, some people were having a hard time keeping them alive. And as these are rather expensive, especially for roaches, I know folks don't want to take the chance, pick them up and have them die off. That would be terrible. Obviously, we don't want anything to die, even if it's cheap or inexpensive. But in this case, when you spend, $150, $200 for a bunch of roaches and then they die, that's a huge hit. So what I was hoping to do is raise these guys up, get them breeding, and be able to show what I do and how I'm having success with them. Now, to be clear, I'm sure there's going to be folks out there that watch this video and go, oh, I'm keeping them differently. That's fine. And I know there are different ways to keep these guys. This is just what's been working very, very well for me. So what we're going to do here is kind of a rehousing video where I'm going to take some of them, put them into a new enclosure. We're going to talk about the enclosures I'm using, some of the pitfalls you got to be aware of, the setups, the temperatures, every little minute detail of what I do to keep these guys flourishing. And I'd say they are flourishing because there are quite a few of them now. They're doing well. They're active. They're eating. They're mating. We got little babies everywhere. It's been great. So enough of me talking. Well, there's going to be a lot more of me talking, just less of this. Let's take a look at my Magnificent Emerald Roaches. All right, so as we're trying to make this a very thorough video, because I probably won't do another one of these again, what we're going to start off with is showing what I'm going to move some of the roaches into. Now, this is going to be kind of a rehousing because what happened is the population has exploded in the other enclosure I have, so I want to make two enclosures now, so I want to get some of them and put them in here. However, the biggest issue I've had with the C. magnifica is finding appropriate enclosures for them. Unfortunately, the nymphs are incredibly small, and the first enclosure I put them into, which we'll see in a little bit, actually, they were getting out of little holes around feeding hatches and stuff. I had to be very creative with little pieces of paper towel and such to make sure they couldn't get out. And this was after I went and put screen across the top to make sure they couldn't get out of the top. So let me show what we got here. First of all, this is basically, I think it's called reptileg now. They come up with these weird names for these things. This is the arboreal version of the reptile growth or barbarous growth enclosures. They started selling these like $30. I love them already. I was eyeing them and trying to figure out something to use them for. And while trying to figure out what to put these guys in, I looked at a lot of things. Tarantula cribs has some wonderful enclosures, but I was trying to figure out how to make sure I could close up all the little gaps. So I finally settled on this here. Now I'll show you what we got. We have the perf lid. So that's going to provide, the other enclosure I have has all top ventilation. This is going to provide some good top ventilation. They do have these little plugs back. This is for running the wires through if you're running something like, I don't know what you're putting in there, honestly, that should have heat because you shouldn't do it with the plastic. But anyway, they come with these little plugs now and you just put these in here. So that's blocked off. Now, this is what I did. I was going to record myself doing it, but it was kind of tedious and there was swearing involved. But what we have here is I bought some nylon mesh screening, and I bought way too much, so we have a bunch of this folded up in the garage. Cut little strips of it, so there's a strip, I think I did this one like an L shape, and then there's another strip there. Is this showing up? Mm-hmm. And what I did is cut it right to the shape of here, and then I use Gorilla Glue to just get it taped down or affixed to the plastic. So hopefully this will hold. They will go out and explore, but what I was afraid of is if you look here, and if you zoom in on these, those little holes are large enough to permit an escape from one of the little nymphs. So I was trying to desperately come up with a way to make sure they couldn't escape. So this is the best way. It still allows airflow and still a little bit of cross ventilation. honestly only on the top, but I think this should work because my other enclosure, again, is top ventilated and I've had no problems with them whatsoever. And then the other thing I want to point out, and this is what you got, no matter what you use, if you see, go through the whole thing, make sure there's no possible way a little nymph can go out. Because what I did was, after putting that in there, I realized this is the hinge that allows you to open it. And if you open this up here, there was originally a little groove right in there. And so I covered that up with tape. And then the ends were open. So I covered those up with tape. So it still works. It'll work as a hinge. It's going to work fine. But if you look down in here, there are no openings for them to get through. So that's the trick with this. You got to kind of ferret out all the little openings ahead of time. That did not happen the first time we got these. The ones I got were large enough that they weren't escaping, and then they had babies. And next thing you know, I took the thing down once to change the food, do the watering and everything, and I look, and there's babies crawling all around. And luckily, I believe I got them all. They didn't get too far. They were just starting to disperse and go out. But I'm always worried. Obviously, we have house spiders around here that I keep in here for pest control, and I was afraid I was going to find one of these little guys in the actual webbing of a house spider. And then for other ingredients, the ingredients that we have here, several pieces of cork bark. I basically drill these with holes, use hot glue, and I stick these plastic. I think I got these from Petco, and I got to order more. Remind me of that. This is the last of them. But what we want is to give some foliage here. This will allow them, a lot of them will hide underneath it. Plus, when I water them, and we'll talk about this more later when I show how I do maintenance for these guys in watering, what I like to do is take, I guess we're doing it now, I like to spray water with one of these because it doesn't like blast water in. And what I like to do is soak down the leaves, so it's almost like dew on leaves, and they will come and drink from that. So A, it provides coverage. B, it provides a place for them to drink. We're going to have this one here. Now, I like to be able to see them sometimes. So what's going to happen is some of them are going to go along the back here. We're going to put this against the back of the enclosure. But I notice they like to hide. This will give them a space to hide to, because the females tend to, when they are ready to have babies, they retreat from the rest of the group and they go hide. So I'm hoping this will supply a spot for some of them to go. And then we're going to try to negotiate, because I noticed in the other ones, some of them will live on the ground. So we'll put this one in here and allow them to go underneath it and hide there, and then there'll be leaf litter. And then what we have here is, I believe it's a crested, I'm cheating now, I'm looking at my notes. Crested gecko feeding ledge. If somebody's got something else out there that works, that's great, but I did want a situation where I could put the food above the ground so they can come up and get it. I don't want the food ending up on the ground where it could possibly mold. And that's one of the big concerns with these guys. You don't want to get mold in the enclosure. So what I do is I will mount this up here like I did with the other one. And then there's these little cups that go into it. Here's an older one that I'm not using, but they drop right in. And then I put the food in there, usually fruit, food, and they can eat off that. And we will try to do what I did. Even though they can climb plastic and glass, I try to put it close to one of these ledges so that they can have a spot to retreat to if I disturb them. And this worked well with the other one, except for the fact one of the suction cups popped off. And now all of the roaches, as we'll see later on, are hiding behind that. So I can't even put it back on without squishing them. So with that said, what we're going to do is put some substrate in here. My substrate is mostly dry, and it's a mix of cocoa fiber, peat, and this has a bit of vermiculite because I will use it for the moisture-dependent species, and it allows it to, A, absorb moisture better, and B, kind of hold the moisture better. But what I do is I let the substrate dry out completely. I don't keep it wet at all. That prevents mold down in the bottom. And I've never had an issue with it. And I know there's a lot of contradictory information on how to keep these. Some folks say you got to keep them really moist. I have found that a lot of the people I've heard from that had a hard time with them tried the moist route and they ended up dead. I think ventilation is incredibly important. Somebody talked about them like it was kind of the same way you do a Carabina versicolor, where you give them access to moisture, but you keep everything mostly dry and well ventilated. And it seems like that's what's working for me. So again, if you find somebody else is doing it differently and they're having success, feel free to choose which one to listen to. I'm not going to get hurt feelings, but this is, people have been asking me how I've been keeping them. This is how I've been keeping them. And again, we've had a lot of good luck with it. So what we're going to do is pat this down here. We don't need a lot of it. We'll put some dry stuff on top. Might sound super nasally. I feel like I'm super nasally. My nose is all flat.
No.
I'm kind of gross. Yeah, you kind of hummed it.
No, it sounds fine.
Put a little more in. This is slightly damp, but what it'll do, because of the top ventilation, it's going to air out rather quickly. And then what we're going to try to do, let's wipe down the side that's got dust on it. Let's wipe down this. And I'm going to miss the back of this. Sometimes you put a little water on it. It helps it stick a little bit more. This one right in here. And what I want is this kind of butted up against it. There we go. Perfect. Push that down. So hopefully this one stays. So what we have here is a situation where if they're eating, I found sometimes when you open the top, they'll all be gathering around the food. They'll kind of scatter, and this will give them a place to kind of scatter to and hide. And we're going to give them the round one over here in the corner. Get right down. Thinking of Scary Movie 2 there for a second. Hey, what? Put that one in here. Maybe we'll put one on top of it. This is going to give them some space. And then what we're going to do is put a little leaf litter, not a lot. This stuff works well. I forget what plant it is. I got to look at what tree it was I got this from. I got it off eBay. It works well, but not particularly well for moist ones. I noticed it'll mold a bit. I would love to find the oak stuff again, but because this is going to be a dry enclosure, I don't see it being an issue. It's only if it's a lot of moisture. So we're going to put that in there. So there we go. This looks like it's staying put. So what this will allow is they can hide behind here. They can hide behind here. They can hide inside there. They can hide. A lot of them will end up. And I noticed this before we started shooting this video. I took the other enclosure out and I lifted up the piece on the ground because I'm like, there's nothing under here. I'm not going to put one in there. And there were several of them hiding under there. So they will use all those areas to be able to hide. And then when we put the top on, usually there's these little rivets. Let's see, is this the right way? No. Is it me or is this not going? Oh, there we go. I'm sorry. Nope. It caved in a little bit. Oh, no, it's fine. I'm an idiot. There we go. So if that goes on like that, normally there's little rivets that go in here. You basically little plastic rivets, you put them in. Where the heck did I put the thing for it? Up here? Yeah, here they are. So those are the rivets. That's the tool. You put the rivet in, you twist it, it holds it on. I don't think I'm going to connect them because they're not going to be able to push it away out of this lid. And this will give me an opportunity that if I want to clean the food out, I can just pull this right off and hopefully they'll stay up in here. Because you'll see the fun part about these guys, and I have the fun in quotes, is the fact they are quick. They will move. They're boogie. And when you open the top, a lot of them will try to skirt out. So what's wrong?
Can they escape through the holes though?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, we may have to put rivets in.
You're going to have to.
Very good point.
Like they're going to go right through there.
All right, we're going to leave that in there. I knew that, you know what the worst part was? I thought I wasn't going to put them in, and then I'm like, I have to put the rivets in because of the holes. And then I'm like, no, I don't have to put the rivets in. So good thing you were there because we would have come back. Yeah, those are definitely big enough. They'll go right through that. So, yep, the rivets will be in, which will make this, or
tape.
Yeah, I think I'm going to tape them over. I think what I'm going to do, I use gaffer's tape on this, but duct tape would work. I think what I'm going to do is put pieces of duct tape on the inside, or even Scotch tape sticks to this stuff like you wouldn't believe, and just cover up the holes. I think that'll be the way to go because it's going to be a lot easier. I will tell you right now, when you're working with them, there's going to be ones going up here. Take this. What I'll sometimes do when I take the covers, I'll put something over top of it so they can't escape, do my work in here, and then carefully put this back on. So there we go. That's our new, I guess this is supposed to go in the back. That's our new enclosure for them. This doesn't quite, I think it's bow one of the sides. Oh, there it goes. Nope. I think one of the sides is bowing in a little bit. There we go. So that's going to be our new enclosure. Next step is we're going to bring the other one over and we're going to start pulling these guys out, and we'll talk a little bit more about the overall requirements in terms of temperature, moisture, feeding, all that good stuff. So now that we've shown the new setup, we're going to go take a look at what I had them in originally. This is my Corydodarum magnifica, Magnificent Emerald Roaches, as I probably didn't need to repeat that because this is coming after the part we already shot, but whatever. Anyway, this original enclosure, this is one of the Crapels enclosures. I actually originally bought them because it sounded like crap because I had Crapels. I thought it was funny, so I said I'll try one out, but I actually really like these. But when I went to put them in here, I realized I had to make a ton of changes. And even after I put the roaches in there, we had to do some things to make sure that it was escape-proof. So number one, let me show you some of the things we did to this. If you notice here, there are little spots where the hinges are, where there are holes in there. And I don't know if you can see it, but if I take a pair of tweezers, you can see right in there, there's a hole big enough for a nymph to get out of. So what I did is just made little plugs. You can make wood plugs. You could, whatever. There's a million different things you could do for this. I just found this was easier. So I put plugs in there. This had a little hatch. There were places around the hatch they could go out. So I used hot glue to close that. And then what we're going to do here is I'm going to open this up to show what we did on the top, because what it has, nice little plastic ventilation, which is great, except for the fact the babies could come out through here. And what ended up happening is when I first put them in here, there was no problem whatsoever. And then they had babies. And one day I came up and I found a baby sitting right on top. And I realized a bunch of the babies had gotten out. So I had to collect, I think it was like 12 of them out, get them back in there and try to scramble to figure out a way to make this thing suitable for these guys. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to pop this open and you'll see that's a male. So if anybody's wondering the difference between the males and the females, that's a male right there. You can see the wings. Guy looks like an older male. Here, I'll put the flashlight on it. There it is. So anybody looking for the difference between males and females, males have the wings. They don't fly large distances, but I have had them jump off and boogie. But you can see what we did here is I cut screen to go into that area and then hot glued the screen to make it so they couldn't go through. So we replaced this. So know that whatever you're using, you have to make it nymph proof, and they are very tiny, can slip out very small holes. So that's very important to recognize how many berries kind of get in there. I had somebody ask, can you do the old trick? Like for some roaches, you can put a thing of Vaseline around the top, or I believe they actually make something for roaches that you can buy that's meant to go around the top to keep them from climbing. Yes, I assume you can do that. I just don't like doing it because that stuff's a pain in the butt to get off when you're trying to clean the enclosure. It usually gets kind of icky. I'd rather just make it escape proof. But if you don't have an enclosure, if you have a big glass enclosure and you want to do that, it would probably work. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to show a couple things. So one question, let's talk about feeding right now. If Billy wants to look in there, what we have in there is bee pollen. I'll show you the actual bag. This is the bag, bee pollen granules. I believe this was around 25 bucks for 2 pounds. I've barely used, I mean, there's still probably at least over a pound in here. So I've had some people say it can be pricey, but it's going to last you a long time. And I think one of the keys to these, having spoken to other people, is that with some of the roaches, they run out of food. It's no problem. You put some food in when you get a chance. These guys, I always keep the bee pollen available. This is always in there at all times. I have found that if it's particularly humid out and this stuff gets a little, like, I won't say mushy, but it starts to clump together, then what I do is every time I do go to water them or add some moisture, I take the stuff out, I dump it, clean it out, and I put some new dry stuff in there. It's usually pretty crunchy. And that allows them to eat. I find them eating in there all the time. So I do think bee pollen seems to be one of the keys to this. I've spoken to other people that use fish flakes, crushed up dog food. That's great. And I think if you want to diversify the diets, you can add that. But I think the bee pollen particularly is important. And then what I usually do is once or twice a week or so, I put either some banana, we've done banana or apples. They seem to love both of them. We put grapes in once. They were with the grapes. I think it depends on, try different fruits out, see what yours like. But we always have banana on hand. And Billy will often pick up apples. We put a couple slices in there or some bananas, and I'll show that later. Should be able to show that later because we're going to add food after we get these guys rehoused. But then I put that in there, let them feed off that. And obviously after a couple of days, if it gets nasty, I take it out and clean it out. But they seem to appreciate that. But the bee pollen seems to be the key with them. And as you can see, I have these in the other enclosure too. That's the crested gecko feeding ledge. I like this, but this is what I was talking about when we were discussing that. You can see how this suction cup came up. And the nymphs in particular like to squeeze into little teeny tiny places. So they got behind the suction cup. So obviously if I try to put that suction cup back on, we're going to have squished roaches. And we have a bunch of the nymphs around here. And then there are adults scattered throughout this. So what we're going to try to do now is I'm going to talk a lot about precise notes about the care of these guys because I know they're still giving people trouble. And this is more so people can emulate what I'm doing, see if it works for you. I'm sure people are going to chime in doing it a different way, whatever works, but this is what's been working for me. So what we're going to do, my original plan was to clean this whole thing out and get some of the new specimens or some of the specimens into this new one here. I'm going to have to be careful now because as I was checking this out today, there is a female behind this one that just had babies and I don't want to mess with her. The original plan was to take all this stuff out eventually and clean it. That might have to wait till another day. But I think what we're going to do is probably take this one out, which has got a bunch of on it, put it over here, take this out and swap them. It'll just be easier. And hopefully Billy can get some good pictures. So let me get my notes over here because I have copious amounts of notes. So again, I got these in July of 2024. I got several of them. It's obviously almost a year and a half later. I've had very good luck reproducing them. So as we start doing this, let me just talk a bit about temperatures. In the summer, it's around 80 to 85 degrees or 27 to 29.5 degrees Celsius, that's when I get most of the breeding out of them. And then I do a winter cool-off period. I've since read many people do a winter cool-off period. It helps to stimulate more breeding when the temperatures warm up a bit. So in the winter here, it's about 73 degrees or 23 degrees Celsius. I've heard some folks that do temperatures in the 60s. So the lower, like 65, even 60, and they do perfectly fine. They're going to slow down. They're not going to breed, but it allows them to grow, mature. And then when things start warming up, you'll see the breeding start happening. So they don't need super warm temperatures. It sounds like, having read many things, mine are right in the range, which is kind of perfect for these guys. But I want to mention that because I know there's been some talks about people adding more heat when theirs aren't breeding, and that's not necessarily needed. So we're going to take this one out, unfortunately. And then what we're going to do is pick this one up and hopefully get Billy some good shots of these, because this is covered with babies. And I mean, we got a nice green female there. And you can see sometimes they have more of a bronze look to them, but then that one there, if you want to get a nice shot of that. Can you get a close-up of it, or there it is. That's a beautiful roach. So I know some people are grossed out by these. I get it, but we keep a lot of roaches for, obviously, feeders. I do feel bad about it. I've mentioned this in many of my feeding videos, that I get no joy out of seeing the roaches get eaten, because obviously we raise them. So they're not pets, but I feel for them. But this gives me an opportunity to kind of raise them up. There's a male right there, obviously an older male. Another male down there. I got to make sure I don't take all the males out. I'm just going to go ahead and stick that one, make sure there's none at the bottom. Nope. A little nymph down there. Stick that right in here. Nope, sorry. We got to watch these guys, because the little babies are coming out. And then what we're going to do is probably capture a couple more adults. Nope. You're going to end up in the new one. What I got to capture the adults here, where the heck was it? I had a little cut off cup. Oh, right here. There you go. These guys cling to everything. When you use a brush, they cling to the brush. It won't come off. It's a blast. Now, I want you to take a look down here. Let's see if we can, I'm going to shine the flashlight in. This is the issue I have with them. Now there is a dead male there. I try to fish out. Anytime one of them dies, I try to go in and fish them out. The problem I have is most of those are discarded exoskeletons. And it can be very difficult to determine the difference between a live roach and the exoskeleton. So, for example, a couple weeks ago, I pulled out one of these things. I started plucking out what I thought were going to be empty exoskeletons. Instead, I kept grabbing roaches. They were not pleased with me. The other thing is trying to figure out dead roaches as opposed to ones that it's just a freshly molted exoskeleton. Now, the male, obviously, that's it. That male is mature. I think this one is, nope, that's an exoskeleton too. So just a lot of them. So here's the deal. If you keep them on the drier side, and I do keep these guys dry, I do not moisten down any part of the substrate. You could, I've read of people that keep like a third of it dry, or a third of it moist. I don't do that. What I end up doing, I'll show after how I do it when I get these guys on here, is usually 3 times a week or so. I go in with one of these things here. One of these. And I basically go and I squirt water all around the edges, around in here on the leaves, kind of moisten everything down a little bit, and they go and it can drink from that. But if you keep the bottom dry, you're not going to get like any mold or anything like that from the exoskeletons. But my gosh, there are a lot down there. All right, so what I'm going to do now, I think I'm going to try to pick up, let me get this one out of here. We have, for the record, no idea how many are in here. Oh, look at that. I lost track at around 90 the other day. I got a flashlight in there. That good? Mm-hmm. Look at that big green one. They are stunning. So this is good, because this will give us a bunch of little ones and big ones. So we have got a good mix there. Now, what I'm going to have to do, I'm not going to do all of this on camera, but I'm going to have to go in there and try to scoop out the top layers, find all the exoskeletons, get them out of there, figure out which one of these are actually live. You can see there's 1, 2, 3. I think all of these are mostly. Yeah, a lot of these are babies. Little baby right in there. Oh, that's an exoskeleton. Exoskeleton, there's a live one right there. Sorry. No, that's, yeah. That's the fun part of cleaning them out, which obviously I got to do a better job of, but they molt so often. All right, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to stick this round one back in here. Again, I wanted really, and I am going, just so everybody knows, what I'm going to do is after that, those babies harden up a little bit, I'm going to pluck this one out, clean out this entire thing, but I don't want to do it right now. I do want to pull this off, clean out the suction cups, get them stuck back on there. But what I tried to do with this, and I mentioned this earlier, is I have this touching the cork bark. I did the same thing over here because what will end up happening is when you take the top off, they tend to scatter. And this allows them to kind of go and hide amongst the fake foliage in here, underneath there. So let's go over some points about these guys. Food, we talked about food. I give them the bee pollen at all times and then add in some fruit. Moisture, I do the spraying, and I don't do misting per se. I do spraying. I spray that water in there, kind of give everything a good, like almost like it was a rain shower, and it lasts for a little bit and then it evaporates out. I've had no problem with this technique whatsoever. In the wintertime, even when it's super dry, they've done perfectly fine. Ventilation. Again, as I mentioned when we were doing the build, people talk a lot about you want some good cross ventilation. It can be tricky to find an enclosure that is appropriate for these guys. It offers good ventilation. With the top ventilated one, they have done just fine. Obviously, there's going to be no buildup of moisture in here. What I've gathered is people that keep them on the moist side tend to have a lot of ventilation that kind of like, again, like the Caribbean versicolor when we're referring to tarantulas, that if you keep it moist, you have to have that good airflow. This has worked for me. This one obviously has the ventilation on the top and on the sides. So it's going to have a bit of cross ventilation, not down here though, but it's been working well for me. Temperatures, we talked about in the summer, 80 to 85 degrees is when you're going to get most of your pairing and you're going to get a lot of nymphs. Winter, we cool it off. It gets down to 73. They will do a little bit of breeding. You'll get some nymphs here and there, but it will slow down a great deal. And we kind of do this with our feeders too. We get all our feeders in the summertime and then things slow down in the wintertime. Now, as far as behavior, you saw they're rather laid back overall. They're not super fast, but they can boogie if motivated. They're really, really good at just when your package turns, suddenly getting out of the enclosure and running away. So you got to keep an eye on them when you're working with them, but they're not overly fast. Again, the males have the wings so they can jump and kind of flutter down to different areas. So keep an eye on them when you open it up. I found that most of them, if you give them a place to hide, will go and kind of hide when you open up the enclosure, but I have had some instances where I open it and the top is covered with them and I have to kind of brush them down in. Now, as far as reproducing them, as I mentioned, I got them first in July of 2024. We had babies late August, early September. It's supposedly, depending on the temperatures, a 1.5 to 2 month gestation period. It would be longer if colder. And it takes about 8 to 12 months for them to mature. Males mature earlier than the females. Males versus female, we already showed what a male looks like with the wings. The females are the nice big ones with all the green all over them. Babies will hide under the mothers, and I have some footage I'll put up here. They basically go underneath the mother and stay under it for a molt or two, which is absolutely adorable. And if you have multiple mothers with babies, they will switch and go under different mothers. They don't seem to care if it's their babies or another female's babies, which I thought was absolutely adorable. So anybody that's struggling with reproduction of them, that's what I've seen with mine. A lot more reproduction in the warmer summer months, a little reproduction in the wintertime, but they've been consistently reproducing for me. Again, as I said earlier, I tried to count the other day, do a rough count. I lost track around, I think it was around 80 or 90, and that was before lifting up some of the stuff that was in here. Trying to think, are we missing anything? We've done temperatures, we've done the moisture, we've done the feeding, we've done the breeding. So overall, I found that with these conditions, mine have been reproducing well. Obviously, we're about to put a bunch. We probably put what? I'll have to go back and watch in the video, but probably 40, 50 of them in there now, 30, 40. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. So we'll have 2 colonies of these going. One other thing I want to mention, Billy just brought up, I forgot, is that when we were doing the setup for this, we talked about the fact I'm probably not going to put the rivets in because it's just going to be a lot easier to do care to pull this off. But what I did is put pieces of Scotch tape over the rivet holes to keep them from going out. I also we talked about this one here, I ended up pulling off the gaffer's tape because I didn't think it was going to hold well and put a piece of Scotch tape over that. It's important to make sure if you think a hole might allow them to escape, do something about it because, again, twice I had to go and alter this one here to make sure they weren't all getting out. Luckily, I caught it soon enough that I did not find any around the room or anything after that, but it was a little scary. And then as far as the, let me just show how this works. As far as the feeding is concerned, this stuff is really easy to work with. It comes with a little spoon here. And just put this stuff in here. I'm going to add bananas later. We have bananas, right?
Yep.
All right, so I'll add banana later for these guys to kind of make it worth it for their new move. But that's as simple as that. I do every once in a while. Some of it will sprinkle on the ground. I will sometimes put some like on the cork bark. Not a lot of it. As long as this is kept dry, that won't mold. If you drop a bunch of this on here and this is wet, I'm guessing you probably get mold, and that's something I've read they do not deal very well with, so keep an eye out on that. As far as anything else, nymphs. Oh, one more thing I want to say about the nymphs. Notice all of these. If you look down into the cork bark right there, you'll see there's a roach hiding there. They love those little areas right down in here.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. They love those little nooks and crannies in those pieces of cork bark. They will hide in those. I might play around with drilling some holes in thicker pieces of cork bark to allow them to hide in, but those are the places. The nymphs love to get in the little teeny tiny places. So there was a point I didn't think we had any babies in here, and then I pulled out a piece of cork bark, and a bunch of them like scuttered into the little holes in the cork bark. So keep in mind the nymphs love tight areas that they can hide in, so you want to give them as many of those as possible. And then the adults will hide behind things. They will hide inside. Look here. This is going to be a perfect place for some to hide inside. They hide behind the cork bark. And then, of course, if they get those suction cups up, they'll hide behind there. All right, so we're going to stick this back on. I'm glad they actually behaved pretty well. I may go pull some more out of here. I don't want this video to just be me hunting these things down the whole time. So what I'm going to do is after the camera goes off, I will probably try to clean this up a little bit. But there we go. The C. Magnifica, lovely animals, very cool looking, fun to raise for somebody who wants to raise something that's a little different than spiders. Obviously, mostly what we do on here is tarantulas and spiders. And obviously, I don't like talking about things that I don't have a lot of experience with, but considering it's been well over a year now, and we have tons and tons and tons of these, I figure it's time to share what I'm doing. And people can figure out, is that what you want to try? Do you want to try what somebody else is doing if they're having success? Whatever, this is just the way I'm doing it right now. All right, so before we finish this video, I did want to take a moment to just show what I do in terms of maintenance. Now, obviously, we already have right in here the pollen. You don't want to get that moist. So what I usually do is honestly, I usually clean it out and do this before I actually fill it up, but we already filled it up for the video. So what I would normally do is I would start by just spraying water around the enclosure, hitting the edge, hitting the plastic plants, down in here, behind here, and just give everything, I'm not trying to soak it down per se, but I'm trying to give them a place to go out. They'll go out and drink off of the cork bark in there. They can drink off the leaves off the side of the enclosure. Then this is when I would usually go ahead and fill that bad boy up, but we already did it. And then usually once or twice a week or so, I do add the fruit. I like bananas. Well, they like bananas, quite frankly, and we always have bananas in my house. So I like to put a few pieces of banana in there. And then what I will do is they will usually come, after I put this on the shelf and they've got some peace and quiet, they will come up and start feasting on both the pollen and the bananas. They tend to go at the bananas pretty hard. And then after a day or so, obviously you don't want it to rot. I pull that out, clean it out, and then I usually put some more bee pollen in until the next time I add bananas or fruits, whether it be bananas, apples. Feel free to chime in. I've heard some folks say mangoes works. We don't usually have mangoes around here, but I would definitely be open to trying mangoes. But that's all there is to it. I usually do this every 2 day or every third day I will go and do this. So I'll pull it off the shelf, change the food. I keep this full at all times. I do think I want to reiterate that in the video. This never gets empty. I always want them to have access to bee pollen. I do think that's one of the secrets to keeping these guys, because again, going through the data of other people that have kept them, that have struggled, a lot of them would put a little food in there, let it run out, put some more food. They have it at all times. Fruits, water, everything's good to go. All right, so before we go any further on this, I do want to point out that about an hour after we recorded this footage, what happened was I wanted to get some shots of them out eating, because obviously they were all hiding after being, rearranged. So are some shots, not great ones, but they're on the shelf. It's both enclosures, and you can see they're starting to come out and eat. About an hour after this, they were all out on top of the banana and on top of The pollen, it was the males that found it first because the males are usually wandering all around. So the males jumped right on those bananas and then everybody else came out and ate. So they settled in. I did a count of them, or tried to do a count of them, all the ones I could see in both enclosures. I was about at 110 or so. And at that point, I'm sure there was some that I didn't see, or I probably counted some twice. So there's a good amount there. Definitely in the future, we're going to have to take a look at what I'm going to do if the populations continue to explode, because I could see this whole room being filled with these things at some point. So again, it bears repeating, and I know I've said it a couple times probably during the video itself, but I like to repeat my points because you folks would be amazed at how many times I clearly state something in a video and then I get a comment going, hey, could you answer this question? It's one I already answered. So I like to repeat it because a lot of times what happens is people go through, they get overwhelmed by what's going on in front of them. They don't hear it. If I say it a couple times, it kind of sinks in better and they recognize that it's in there. So what am I repeating? The fact that there are other ways to keep these guys. This is how I'm doing it. I do the dry way with the spraying. So if you keep them differently, please feel free to chime in below. If you're raising them, you're getting lots of babies, please feel free to include any pertinent information you think somebody would need to keep them that way. Keep in mind, when I post videos like this up, this is obviously I'm having success with. But what makes these videos more powerful is when folks chime in that are keeping them the same way I am and having success, so that people can see, all right, Tom Moran obviously keeps them this way and they're working for him. But when I go down the comments, there's also a lot of other people that are doing the same thing and having the same success. So whatever way you're keeping them, please feel free to leave a comment. Let us know. What are you seeing with these guys? You have babies, any details that you think might be pertinent to somebody looking to keep them. Because again, one of the reasons I love doing these kind of videos is when there's an animal out there that people are kind of having a hard time with, it's nice to put something out there and go, this is working. If you want to do something differently, that's fine, but this is what's working for me. Give people the confidence they need to keep them. And maybe in some cases, I know I just posted up a video where I showed off some, and I had some people come on and go, man, I'd really like to get them, but I'm kind of worried about the care. I'm seeing all this conflicting information. Maybe this is the type of thing that helps you hop off the fence, grab some, and give them a shot, because they are incredibly rewarding. I absolutely love them now. I know I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I was kind of like, roach is not my thing. They're my thing now. I love taking care of them. They're cute. They are beautiful. That green is just spectacular. I've seen folks out there have different strains of them where the green almost looks an aqua color. Even when they're bronze, I've had some turn out bronze. They're spectacular looking animals. And I think for some people, it will help you get over that revulsion many carry when you say the word roach. You say roach, people are like, oh, it's disgusting. I tell folks that I keep roaches to feed my spiders. They're more grossed out by the roaches than they are the spiders. But this shows you that these ornamental roaches can be absolutely stunning, and it has opened my mind up to possibly looking at other ornamental roaches to keep in the future. So if you think there's something cool that I might like to keep that's manageable, please feel free to chime in on that as well, because I'm always looking for new pets to keep and be able to talk about. So that'll do it for this one. You guys know the drill. For those of you who've been here, you know what I'm going to say. For people that are maybe watching me for the first time, if you liked it enough to subscribe, I really do appreciate it. I hope you check out some of the other videos and stuff, but you can click that right up there. I will put some other videos in here if you want to check out something else before you commit to having those notifications from me. If you take the time to comment, I'll take the time to respond. Just know it can take me a couple days. Guys, stay safe. We'll catch you all next time.